Welcome to Have a Happy Arty Time. My name's Janette and I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful image. It's a winter scene with a beautiful red bird and this lovely little wolf here. Now I'll be using some already made backgrounds, and if you would like to see how they were made and how I do this actual process, please check out my sunflower video, and it shows you all the steps you need to know to do this one. I also have my line drawing here available to you, so please don't hesitate to drop me an email. It's down in the description and I'll send that straight to you. And I want to say thank you to all those that have been gathering my line drawings, and I really hope that you've been having a happy arty time. So our first step now is to transfer the image onto our backgrounds, and I do that with graphite. So sit back, relax. I'm going to speed this part up and then work through the next few steps with you. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so we have the graphite on the back. Turn our image over and I'm going to get this one here. Place my background down and I'm looking here and I'm seeing I'd like to use this tree in here. So I'm going to just place this one down here. I'll just cut the bottom of this off first. Get that in the middle there. Lovely. Now I'm just holding my finger here and I'm just taking my pen and I'm just going to press over that as we go. Now we hold on to it. We can tape this down. I just hold on to it and have a little peek and see if I'm getting something there. Okay, so we have a very light image here that you can see just going around here of our lovely little wolf and taking this up into the bird area. So what I'm going to do now, I have to get really close up with being short-sighted, so I'm just going to go over this and darken this and bring this back to you. Okay, so I'm back with the outline of my image on my background. Now, what I normally do after I've done this stage, I put the white gesso on, which I'll paint in and show you, and that'll be very quick, I'll speed it up. But what I like to do is, with my outline drawing, before I do it, if I'm not used to what I'm doing, I have a run through first. And so I just get one of my drawings, this is just copy paper again, and I just go through and I write down the layers that I've placed on. So for instance, raw sienna was my first layer here, and then deep sienna, and then brown, and so forth and so forth, and the same with the birds. Now sometimes I'll do this alongside actually doing my image, so I'll have my image here and I will paint the raw sienna here, then I'll paint it here, and I'll just keep going back and forth over onto each one. And I find that my second one is always better than my first one, so I'm just getting used to the process, used to my drawing, and I think it's a great idea. You may like to try it. Okay, so I'm just going to paint this one here with the light coat of watered down gesso. So I always add that little bit of water to my gesso just into the lid, and then I wipe it off and I just simply paint in. I leave my graphite line visible because that is going to give me another area of interest when I'm painting and allow me to see where I'm going as well. So I'll just speed this up now and away we go. As I'm going through this, placing the gesso on, I'm just building up the areas I would like lighter, but also it's giving me that memory of where to place things and how to go about things inside my drawing. So it's a really good practice for completing our final image. We will be very familiar with where to put our paint, etc. when we've completed the gesso, which is a great idea. It's just all helping the technique. Now I'm just going to run alongside very lightly the graphite line of the plant, and that'll just help highlight that as we add our detail. You can use a very fine brush for this, but I'm okay just placing this down because it will fade off into the background and just give an extra depth to the final image. I love using the gesso because it dries and it's permanent, and also because it gives me still the ability to see through the background, which adds another dimension to our painting. I'll let this dry completely and we will make a start. So we're ready now to add our watercolor to our gesso painted images. I have this here that I talked to you about before, and I have my steps written down, so if you would actually like a copy of this too, just email me and I can get that to you. My first layer on the wolf is simply a light layer of raw sienna, so I'm just going to place that down into the areas, not worrying about any detail of course at this point in time. I'm still leaving the graphite areas uncovered and just painting in between at the moment. And I'm working side by side on my two images at the one time. You'll notice that this image here, the white gesso was not put on as heavily as it was on this one, and I just wanted to give that a go and to see how this one would come up compared to this image. So now adding some dark sienna, and from here on in it'll be little brush strokes all the way to show the fur. It's going to look very, very rough as we first start going. The strokes are going to look odd. Nothing's going to resemble fur at the beginning, but I'm just going to place these lopsided strokes, thin, thick, throughout these areas and just keep building up layers. Okay, onto some brown now, and I'm going to just change up my brush and use a thin rigger brush here to add my darker brown. I'll be working on the actual snout of the dog and the eye a little bit later as we get through this process. We just have this defining area here of the dog's fur, and then everything else is pretty much just strokes again. All these lines will be softened down at the end at one of the last steps that we do. So for now we're seeing all sorts of funny marks, most of them not resembling fur at all. When I first began to do fur, I had to develop my own style and keep pushing through until I understand exactly what the ending would be in my painting, and all the steps before were just going to lead me to that ending. But it was very nerve-wracking to begin with because I had no idea how to do it. So I'm in no way an expert on doing fur, but I think my finished products come up okay, especially for jelly plate printing. Now I'm just going to make a black and brown in my little well here. Try that colour on my tissue. Needs a little bit more brown in it. Yes, that's good. So I'm just going to put some shadowed areas in now. Now I'm just going to get some white gouache here, and I'm just going to place it into the eye because I always like to keep my eye on the eye. It helps me to understand how deep I go with my colours and things, so I'm wanting to bring that out brightly now. And I'm going to start to add a little bit of white just in areas to help me to understand where I am. I will lighten this off again. And while I'm at it, I'll just put a little dot in the bird's eye as well. Bring that right up. I'm just going to play a little bit now, putting in some of the snow on the dog so I can just get an idea of where there is some falling. On the wolf, I mean, not the dog. A little bit on his head, a little bit on his snout. And the great thing about this, being on the acrylic, we can just wash it all back if we run into trouble at all. We'll go through and fix anything up that we need to after. This is just putting some paint down. You can see my lines over a bit here. Not to worry at this point in time. Okay, so I'm going to leave the woof to dry and I'll start on the bird. So I'm just going to turn these two around, get our little bird here. And what I normally do with the bird is go into its lightest colour first. And so I'm going to be putting some yellow all over the bird. And again, just going in between the graphite lines. And I'll just leave the eye white. Now we've got some little berries on the end of here, so I'm going to pop the yellow into them as well. Not worrying about being too neat, add some berries. We'll let that dry and continue on. I know that I have yellow actually in the wolf's eye, so I might just put a little bit of yellow on that eye. Letting this dry completely now. Okay, so these are dry now, and what I'm going to do is go around everything with some black pen first, just to lift it from the background a little bit, and I'll see what I need to do. I'm going to be making a few alterations here with his nose and snout, and then I'm going to begin painting again. So here we go. Okay, now to add some red onto the birds, and then I'll be adding some grey onto the wolf, and we'll go from there. You'll notice I'm leaving some of the yellow shine out from the red when I'm going through this. So now to add some crimson onto our bird to show a few shadow areas, and we will be going over it with white again, so we're nowhere near finished yet. It'll still look a bit of a mess. Okay, we'll let that dry. So I might go into his eye now and add the orange. Leaving that all to dry, and I will be back. So I'm back to add some grey into our wolf now, and I've just added a bit of black on top of the white in here. It's a bit messy. You can clean these up with the tissue and water. And remembering my stroke directions, I'm just going to add in some grey here. We'll be covering things up, we'll be putting things back on. You can start to see when we place the grey glaze over the top that things are starting to look a little differently. I am going over everything as I do this, and I will reinstate any area that's needed. Okay, so we'll leave this one to dry. And we can see it starting to take shape now. I'm going to go back into this one a little bit with some more of that white again. White watercolour mixed with a little bit of black. Okay, so while these are drying, I'm going to turn it around and I'm just going to add some white to our tree branch and to our bird, and I'll use a white gel pen for that. lifting it up as I go so I'm not getting a full solid line. Okay, so I'm back now with these, and now I'm going to mix some colour and we're just going to do the final detail. So I'm going to add a little bit of the raw sienna back in, very fine brush this time, and just see if we can lighten this up in some areas. And it'll just be a little bit of hit and miss here and there again. You can see how the fur's softened right down with putting the little light grey mixture on top. Okay, let that one dry there. Just grab this one. Add a little bit of more raw sienna back into this one. So I have my white gouache here, got my rigger brush here, and I'm just going to go around doing the detail now. I can see before I do that I've got my black pen. I'm just going to go around the bird's eye here. So I'm going to splash some snow on and see where we go from here. Now before I do this one, I'm just going to put some black lines along the other white lines here. Flick some of the snow on this one as well too, see what we get. And I might just add some white branches where they were in this, but they haven't come out, so. Okay, so a little bit more white in here now. Okay, so I'm going to let these two dry thoroughly and I'm going to go back in with some black pen, just tidy up a little bit, and it's all done. I might just put a little bit of red into his fur. Go around this little bird. So I have to work on that little bird, won't I? So I'll show you now, a good time to show you now when it doesn't work. When you're on the acrylic, we can rub this back, take out that little beak that's not happening there. So we'll let it dry off, come in back in with some white and go from there with that one. So we have one success here. If I can get the beak done, just get a little bit of green to go over this little area. Okay, so this one's coming up beautiful now, and it was the one that I didn't think would. And I just have to get a little white line in on his mouth here. Add a little bit of black around these ones. And I'll do a little bit of pink in the noses. His nose is a bit big. Let's take his nose back too so you can see just how simple it is to make any alterations. Just the end of that nose, a little bit bulbous. So just take it back. Okay, and I'll just go over it with a little bit of the green that I had. Let that dry and add a nose. Having all sorts of things happen today. And our little nose that is a problem here. And we'll get a nose drawn in here. So a little bit more snow. So I'm loving these prints. They've come up really good. All of them are very different. I'll take some time after and just perhaps put a little bit of more effort into those two birds that are looking a little funny. They don't really look like these two at all, but anyway. And our little wolves, I might slowly work on them and just see how I go. Rushing a bit to get this video done. So hopefully you've enjoyed yourselves. I hope you have a happy arty time. Stay safe. Bye for now.